be a transition. We've never been so close to World War III before, and if it happens, it will be a war like no other. This because of the threat of certain types of weapons. We don't even want to mention the word, but because of the type of weapons that you're talking about today, and I know them better than anybody. You know, I built our military. I totally rebuilt our military. I know more about weapons than just about anybody. And when you look at the incredible destructive power of these weapons, this will be a war like no other. This will not be two army tanks running against each other and shooting. This is going to be something the likes of which we've never seen. And we have a man who's grossly incompetent heading up our nation, and he's competing against Putin and President Xi of China and Kim Jong-un of North Korea. He's competing against people that are at the top of their game, and he was never really at the top of his game. He was never very good, but now he's really not good. Last night was a defeat not only for Biden, but for the entire radical left Democrat Party and the fake news media, who have been lying to the American people as our country was being destroyed. The fake news media, look at all of them back there. Look at all of them. That's a lot of cameras. That's a lot of cameras. That's a lot of camera power. The Joe Biden on stage yesterday was the same Joe Biden who gave us open borders, crushing inflation, rampant crime, 2 new wars, a disastrous Afghanistan embarrassment, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And the international humiliation, think of it, one after another, international humiliation, one after another. Nobody respects him. Foreign leaders don't respect him. You know, we put up $124 billion more given to Ukraine than Europe. Now, Europe is a lot closer. We have a thing called an ocean in between us, right? So no matter how you cut it, it's got to be more important. Why is it that we're not equalized? Why is it that they put up $124 billion, our people, these people in Washington that don't know what the hell they're doing? You know, I stopped it with NATO. We were spending almost 100% of the money for NATO. And I went in my first meeting, I realized, I said, you know, they're not paying their bills, they're delinquent. My second meeting, I said, you got to pay. And they said, well, what would happen if we don't? Then we won't defend you against Russia. And the next day, money came in by the billions. You never saw money come in so fast, Glenn. The money was pouring in. And I took a lot of heat, Michael. Oh, there's Mike Waltz. He knows better than anybody on this subject. He's the all-time. He's the all-time. But am I right? The money came in like at a level that was never seen. Hundreds of billions of dollars poured in. And then I took heat from the press because they said, no, I will not defend you if you're not current. And they said, well, that's not very nice. I said, it's not nice. Now, if I said I will, they wouldn't have paid, right? I suspect. But I took a lot of heat. But the fact is, the Secretary General called it the greatest. He's never seen anything like it, because Bush would come in, make a speech and leave. Obama would come in, make a speech and leave. And then I came in and I didn't make a speech. I just said, these guys aren't paying their bills. They're not paying their bills. I don't want to make a speech until they pay their bills. But they asked me, will you defend us if we don't pay? I said, no, I will not defend you. We're not stupid anymore. And $400 billion came pouring in. You never saw money pouring in so fast. The whole world should know that while Biden is the worst president in the history of America, our country is going to be strong again, and it's going to be very soon. I want the enemies to know that, because we have a 5-month transition period, and I want the enemies to know, don't play around with us during this 5-month period. Don't play around. It's only for them. It's also from, in all fairness, we have enemies on the outside. China, Russia, North Korea, enemies, but they're not really enemies if you have a smart president. If you have a smart president, they're not enemies. You'll make them do great. We had no problems. China paid us hundreds of billions of dollars, and it was so because they respected our country. Thank you very much. He said they respected you. Thank you. Stand up, please. Who said that? Stand up. Because they respected us. You said it better than I could. Thank you. I plagiarized. Thank you. No, they respected us. There was no games. But we have the enemy on the outside, and you can do great things with them. And then we have a worse enemy. I call it the enemy from within. These are the sick people, the socialists. Remember I said, America will never be a socialist country. I was right. I was right. It skipped over socialism, went directly into fascism and communism. It never stopped at the station called socialism. It went worse. And that's a big problem that we have, but I think you're starting to see the end of that. And it's been starting for a while now with us, but I think last night was a big moment for people with common sense that want to see America be great again, want to put America first. Many people are saying that after last night's performance that Joe Biden is leaving the race. But the fact is, I don't really believe that because he does better in polls than any of the Democrats they're talking about. You've seen that, Glenn. These polls come out with some of the names they're being, like Gavin Newsom. He can't run you. He's one of the worst governors. Oh my God. So good. Oh my.
Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Yamisha Sendor in Washington, where for now, President Biden appears to extend
made a statement last night.
All right, guys. I'm sorry, everybody. All people, all who support my video. Reason why I let him talk before I say anything. And man, I see that over and over. And it's always a problem here. I mean, I don't understand. When I was there, I never did what I was supposed to do. But when I'm not there anymore, like I don't give you them. So if I want to come back again, so I make a promise, promise after promise, and then I can do better, than the one who's there. And at the end, we serve only one country. This is one country, which is one country. It's like one country everybody love, which is love America. And man, I say that every day about the former President Donald Trump. And man, the guy don't stop talking. And man, my understanding is, what if he lost the election? What gonna happen? Did anybody see that coming? Did anybody see what coming next if he lost it? Because the guy thinks he's already a president of the United States. Without a doubt, he already thinks he's the president of the United States. So, what if he lost it, guys? What if he lost the election? What could happen, guys? I mean, I mean, it's like they're not thinking. The guy, he's not talking like he gonna lose the election. He's talking like he already won the election, guys. And that's why I let him talk, so you guys can listen to it. We're going to listen to the President of the United States, which is Joe Biden. Listen to what he has to say.
Concerns about making a switch and what that would entail. Suffice it to say, a lot of people are having these discussions in private, even though there's just a few of us who have gone public with our concerns.
Meanwhile, President Biden is facing another major test of his fitness for office as he prepares to host the NATO summit here in Washington this week. He's set to deliver remarks about an hour from now, and on Thursday, Biden will hold a solo press conference taking questions from the press.
Only is he staying in the race, but that he is the man who can beat Donald Trump. That's what he's been saying as he's been out on the campaign trail. And so I think from our reporting, there's a sense that perhaps some of the bleeding has stopped around the president's debate performance almost 2 weeks ago now, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the wound has healed. And so we anticipate that the campaign will continue to both talk about the sort of the talking points that a campaign would be talking about at this point in terms of how they believe President Biden will be a better president than President Trump would be in a second term. And they'll also continue to put the president out there to make sure that he's in front of potential voters and that he's engaging with other political leaders as well, to show that not only is he staying in the race, but he still has the stamina, the vigor, and the mental acuity to. And he's going to speak about the importance of the organization, particularly as it relates to supporting Ukraine in its fight against Russia. We know that world leaders obviously will be gathered around the president, will be watching the president, just as so many here in the U.S. will be doing. And then when he meets with our colleagues on Thursday in that press conference, our understanding is that he's been getting prepped on some of the topics that will be coming up there. And obviously, Yamiche, we know that he will be asked questions about his health.
The former... Knock, knock. Hi there. For Marco Rubio as well. So quite an event here where, you know, they're all local and they are all going to be here today, Yamiche.
Yeah. Definitely a lot to watch there. I also want to ask you, I mean, as we talk about the VP stakes here, what's the latest thinking based on your sources and NBC News' sources when it comes to former President Trump's thinking when it comes to his VP pick?
Look, we've been reading the tea leaves for...
And it's good to see so many friends. 75 years ago, in this very room, NATO's founding document, the Washington Treaty, was signed. Our alliance was created by people who had lived through 2 devastating world wars. They knew only too well the horror, the suffering, and the terrible human cost of war. They were determined that this should never happen again. So they founded NATO.
Maybe a lot of you guys probably don't know who this guy is. This guy, he's what you call a NATO. He's the secretary for the NATO. So that's the one who spoke right now, guys. So listen to what he had to say.
With a clear purpose, to preserve peace and safeguard freedom. A solemn promise, an ironclad commitment to protect each other. One for all and all for one. I have great respect for the Washington Treaty. Not least because it is so short. Just 14 paragraphs, only a few pages. Never have so few words meant so much to so many. Peace has been preserved, freedom has been safeguarded. That makes NATO the most successful alliance in history. When I arrived at NATO 10 years ago, I was told that while it may be the most successful alliance in history, it was not the longest lasting. That honor belonged to the Delian League of ancient Greek city-states. But the League lasted 74 years. So in this 75th anniversary of our alliance, we can finally say that NATO is not only the most successful and the strongest, but also the longest lasting alliance in history. To understand the enduring success of NATO, it is important to recognize our transatlantic alliance was never a given. On the contrary, it is a result of deliberate choices and difficult decisions. Starting with NATO's creation. After World War II, many Americans wanted to leave Europe and bring their boys back home. Just
hold your head up high and don't.
Contains domestic fallout here at home. Democrats still weighing whether to...
And to answer threats as one, because they knew to prevent future wars, to protect democracies, to lay the groundwork for lasting peace and prosperity, they needed a new approach. They needed to combine their strengths. They needed an alliance. And here they signed the Washington Treaty and created the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the single greatest, most effective defensive alliance in the history of the world. Mr. Secretary General, leaders of NATO countries, foreign and defense ministers, representatives from partner nations in the European Union, members of Congress, distinguished guests, welcome, welcome to the 2024 NATO Summit. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to host you in this milestone year, to look back with pride at all we've achieved and look ahead to our shared future with strength and with resolve. Together, we rebuilt Europe from the ruins of war, held high the torch of liberty during long decades of the Cold War. When former adversaries became fellow democracies, we welcomed them into the alliance. When war broke out in the Balkans, we intervened to restore peace and stop ethnic cleansing. And when the United States was attacked on September 11th, our NATO allies, all of you, stood with us, invoking Article 5 for the first time in NATO history, treating an attack on us as an attack on all of us. A breathtaking display of friendship that the American people will never, ever, ever forget. Through all this history, when great changes occurred, people would ask, can NATO adapt? And every time we proved we could adapt, and we did, evolving our strategies to stay ahead of threats, reaching out to new partners to increase our effectiveness. And here with us today are countries from the Indo-Pacific region. They're here because they have a stake in our success, and we have a stake in theirs. Today, NATO is more powerful than ever, 32 nations strong. For years, Finland and Sweden were among our closest partners. Now they have chosen to officially join NATO, and because of the power and meaning of Article 5 guarantee, that's the reason. It was the most important aspect of the alliance in 1949, and it is still the most important aspect. I'd also note, Finland and Sweden joined the alliance not just because their leaders sought it, because their citizens called for it in overwhelming numbers. Remember, NATO's character is fundamentally democratic, always has been and always must continue to be. And today, NATO is better resourced than it ever has been. I want to pause on this because it's significant. In the year 2020, the year I was elected president, only 9 NATO allies were spending 2% of their defense GDP on defense. This year, 23 will spend at least 2%. And some will spend more than that. And the remaining countries that have not yet reached that milestone will get there soon. It's remarkable progress, proof that our commitment is broad and deep, that we're ready, that we're willing, we're able to deter aggression and defend every inch of NATO territory across every domain: land, air, sea, cyber, and space. My friends, it's good that we're stronger than ever, because this moment in history calls for our collective strength. Autocrats want to overturn global order, which is by and large kept for nearly 80 years and counting. Terrorist groups continue to plot evil schemes to cause mayhem and chaos and suffering. In Europe, Putin's war of aggression against Ukraine continues, and Putin wants nothing less than Ukraine's total subjugation, to end Ukraine's democracy, to destroy Ukraine's culture, and to wipe Ukraine off the map. And we know Putin won't stop at Ukraine. But make no mistake, Ukraine can and will stop Putin. Especially with our full collective support. They have our full support. Even before Russian bombs were falling in Ukraine, the alliance acted. I ordered the U.S. reinforcements at NATO's eastern flank. More troops, more aircraft, more capabilities. And now the United States has more than 100,000 troops on the continent of Europe. NATO moved swiftly as well, not only reinforcing the 4 existing battle groups in the east, but also adding 4 more in Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia, essentially doubling NATO's strength on the eastern flank. Together, we've built a global coalition to stand with Ukraine. Together, we provided significant economic and humanitarian assistance. And together, we've supplied Ukraine with weapons it needs to defend itself. Tanks, armored fighting vehicles, air defense systems, long-range missiles, and millions of munitions. The United States, nearly 24 allied partners, have signed a bilateral security agreements with Ukraine. And more countries will follow. Today, I'm announcing the historic donation of air defense equipment for Ukraine. The United States, Germany, the Netherlands, Romania, and Italy will provide Ukraine with the equipment for 5 additional strategic air defense systems. And in the coming months, the United States and our partners intend to provide Ukraine with dozens of additional tactical air defense systems. The United States will make sure that when we export critical air defense interceptors, Ukraine goes to the front of the line. But we'll get this assistance before anyone else gets it. All told, Ukraine will receive hundreds of additional interceptors over the next year, helping protect Ukrainian cities against Russian missiles, Ukrainian troops facing air attacks on their front lines. Make no mistake, Russia is failing in this war. More than 2 years into Putin's war of choice, his losses are staggering. More than 350,000 Russian troops dead or wounded. Nearly 1 million Russians, many of them young people, have left Russia because they no longer see a future in Russia. And Kyiv, remember, fellas and ladies, supposed to fall in 5 days, remember? Was still standing 2.5 years later and will continue to stand. All of the allies knew that before this war, Putin thought NATO would break. Today, NATO is stronger than it's ever been in its history. When this senseless war began, Ukraine was a free country. Today, it is still a free country. And the war will end with Ukraine remaining a free and independent country. Russia will not prevail. Ukraine will prevail. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a pivotal moment for Europe, for the transatlantic community, and I might add for the world. Let's remember, the fact that NATO remains the bulwark of global security did not happen by accident. It wasn't inevitable. Again and again at critical moments, we chose unity over disunion, progress over retreat, freedom over tyranny, hope over fear. Again and again we stood behind our shared vision of a peaceful and prosperous transatlantic community. Here at this summit, we gather to proclaim NATO is ready and able to secure that vision today and well into the future. Let me say this. An overwhelming bipartisan majority of Americans understand that NATO makes us all safer. The fact that both Democratic and Republican parties are represented here today is a testament to that fact. The American people know But all the progress we've made in the past 75 years has happened behind the shield of NATO. And the American people understand what would happen if there was no NATO. Another war in Europe, American troops fighting and dying, dictators spreading chaos, economic collapse, catastrophes. Americans, they know we're stronger with our friends, and we understand this is a sacred obligation. As President Reagan put it, and I quote, "For our fellow democracies are not secure, we cannot be secure. If you are threatened, we are threatened. If you're not at peace, we cannot be at peace." Reagan knew it then, and we know it now. Our nations will continue to keep faith with what we pledged in years to come. Now, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to end my remarks in a slightly unusual way. NATO is an alliance of nations, but also made up of leaders. And one person in particular has done an extraordinary job leading NATO for the last decade. Secretary General Stoltenberg, would you come forward? So much of the progress we made in the alliance is thanks to the Secretary. He's a man of integrity and intellectual rigor, a calm temperament in a moment of crisis, a consummate diplomat who works with leaders across the political spectrum and always finds a way to keep us moving forward. Secretary, you've guided this alliance through one of the most consequential periods in its history. I realize, I was talking to your wife, I personally asked you to extend your service. Forgive me. And you put your own plans on hold. When the Russian war in Ukraine began, you didn't hesitate. Today, NATO is stronger, smarter, and more energized than when you began. And 1 billion people across Europe and North America, indeed the whole world, will reap the rewards of your labor for years to come in the form of security, opportunity, and greater freedom. For these reasons, I'm pleased to award you the highest civilian honor the United States can bestow, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Ask a little. Okay, come forward. I'm asking to read the citation.
President Biden nearing the end of his remarks there, speaking at a gathering of world leaders, NATO marking the 75th anniversary of an alliance that the president says is more powerful than ever. He talked about the enduring strength of the NATO alliance, but it was clearly a message being sent to Russia and Vladimir Putin about NATO's resolve to continue to support and help defend Ukraine. Let's go to our senior Washington correspondent, Hallie Jackson. Hallie, as we watch this, it's hard not to think that there are a couple of audiences that were important from the White House perspective, certainly a domestic audience, and as we mentioned, Russia.
You said it, Lester. That's just what went through my head as you described the message to Russia that President Biden very clearly wanted to send with that announcement, of course, of additional help to Ukraine and those air defense systems, making very clear to Moscow, to Vladimir Putin, that NATO stands with Ukraine and will continue to do so. But there's another audience for this. There's a message also to those in the room, to the world leaders that have assembled here, that President Biden is trying to send, that he is strong enough and vigorous enough to take on this job for another 4 years. And then, of course, the message to viewers, to Americans, to voters, of the case that he has been trying to make since the 12 days since that debate performance, widely panned as disastrous, that was an aberration, not the norm, and that he, in fact, can be energetic and vigorous and is up to the task of what he's got to do. All of that said, Lester, there is still, I think, on Capitol Hill, a sort of grim resignation here that President Biden is going to stay in the race, that people in some corners suggest they need to get behind him, even as you've seen about a half dozen now lawmakers come out and publicly call on the president to withdraw from the ticket. We know that late today there are some political prognosticators that have suggested that in at least 3 swing states, President Biden is now slightly less likely to be victorious.